And Joseph brought his entire family down into Egypt. And they prospered very nicely there. Joseph, his father Jacob, his brothers, they were part of the royalty. Joseph, after all, had become a very, very famous dream interpreter, and he indeed was a chief advisor to Pharaoh. But generations passed, and there was a dynasty overthrow. And as dynasties get overthrown, usually the ones who are closest to those dynasties take a heavy burden afterwards. And it was no different with us Hebrews. There was a Pharaoh, though knew Joseph not. And he was afraid of the Hebrews because, after all, we were very close to the old Pharaoh's family. And if the old Pharaoh's family tried to come back and reclaim their throne, we might take up arms against the new Pharaoh, and he couldn't have that. It was an old story. There are people different in our country, and they might do us harm if we're attacked from the outside. Unfortunately, that story has not grown old, and it's still new to this day. Well, the Pharaoh enslaved us and had us do many, many harsh tasks, day in and day out, throughout year in and year out. And he thought this would be enough to have us not multiply and become smaller in number. But alas, we were a very, let us say, dynamic group at that time, and we had lots and lots and lots of kids. Well, Pharaoh had to do something about this. And he got 2 midwives to go out, and what he told them was say, go out to the Hebrew women, and when they give birth, if it is a male baby, have it killed, and if it is a female baby, let it live. Well, these 2 midwives went out, and they feared God. So when they came back to Pharaoh, they told Pharaoh, the Hebrew women, they are too full of life. They're too quick. We hear about a baby being born, and after all, by the time we get there, boom! They've already done their business, they've had the baby, and they've gone. So we can't do this job for you. Now, God took notice of what the midwives had done because they had saved a lot of lives, and God had a good life for those midwives afterwards. Well, Pharaoh was still fearful of us Hebrews, because our numbers increased even though our labors were very, very hard. It was a very, very, very dark time. But to make it even darker, Pharaoh proclaimed to the people, go out and find the Hebrews, and in every born son, cast that son into the Nile, and every born daughter let her live. And thus started a very, very dark time, a pogrom, a Shoah, if you will. We don't know how long this lasted, but it lasted a long time. Newborn babies, newborn sons being cast into the Nile either to drown or to perish underwater with the crocodiles in their bellies. And it was a very, very, very fearful time for us people. Because after all, the number one job, the number one purpose of any Ima or Abba, mother or father, is to safeguard the life of their children. But at this time, for a long time, we could not. Now there was a certain man from the tribe of Levi, and a certain woman from the tribe of Levi that did something remarkable. They got married, and they decided to have children. The woman gave birth to a child, and she noticed, like every woman, that her child was special, unique, eloquent, in every sacred way possible. But there was an added dimension. Now you can only imagine that for 3 months how hard it was to have this child be hidden. The child had to be silent. The child had to be not seen, not spoken of, not see the light of day. One can only imagine the stressful situation in this family's life, and especially on this poor baby. Well, after 3 months, the child could not be hidden any longer. And the Ima, the mother, took the child and the child's older sister and bundled the child up in a little ark and took the ark with the baby child, only 3 months old, down to the river Nile and placed the ark into the river. And the river carried the ark down the stream, around rocks, past shore, past docks, past boats. And this ark with the little baby in it found its way to a small enclave where Pharaoh's daughter and her maids and servants were bathing in the river Nile. Pharaoh's daughter saw the ark and shouted out to one of her servants, "Go get that for me." And she looked down into the ark, and in this order, this is what she saw. She saw a baby. She saw a baby crying. And she saw that the baby was a Hebrew baby. At some time during that sequence of seeing that it was a baby crying, and it was a Hebrew baby, Pharaoh's daughter took pity on the baby and lifted him up. Now, on the outskirts, a pair of eyes had been following this ark down its journey into the arms of Pharaoh's daughter, and it was the baby's older sister. Now, Pharaoh's daughter could do lots of things, but the one thing she could not do is she could not breastfeed this baby. So she looked around and she saw this little girl, and she begged this little girl to come and said, "Go to the Hebrews, go and find me a wet nurse for this baby." Now, the little girl had a very good idea who to get. So she ran back and got the Ema of the baby. And the Ema, the mother, breastfed the baby for as long a time as needed. And when the baby was weaned, she once again had to give up her baby and give it back to Pharaoh's daughter. Now, Pharaoh's daughter, at this point of the baby being finished weaning and finally being in her arms permanently, she thought, she named the baby. And she named the baby Moshe. Because Moshe means I delivered him from the water. Now, it's strange because in Hebrew, it's a reflexive verb, which actually means one who will deliver. So Pharaoh's daughter, thinking that she was naming the child for what she did, was actually proclaiming the child's name to be an articulation of what the child will do when he grows up. And that was the story of the birth of Moshe.